Hello, David here. I'm just kind of chilling right before work. Let's make sure I got my mic on. I just wanted to bear witness to something. I'm watching this week's Sid Roth. He's talking about this rabbi. I can't see his name at the moment. Jason something. Jason, interesting. Jason Sobel. But anyway, what's interesting, he's talking about these appointed times. Let me show it real quick.
It's like a portal, a door opens to heaven like Jacob and the angels coming up and down the ladder. It happens on the feast. Why is that?
Yeah, because they're called in the Bible the Moedim, the Lord's appointed times. God.
Talking about appointed times. You know, I never noticed. I guess that's in the Bible. I'm pretty sure the appointed time. Here it is. So speak to the people of the Lord and say to them, these are the appointed feast. That's in Leviticus 20. Looks like 23:2. I can't quite see it from here. Yeah, 25:2. But see, I never ever had heard that word appointed time until it had to have been, I'm not sure when it was. It had to have been around 1994 sometime. It had to be after July 4th, I guess, 1994, somewhere around in there. But I never ever heard the word appointed times. I never heard it preached, never noticed it in the Bible. But what's interesting is I had just started sinning, and I didn't know the sin was going to last for the period it was going to last. It was really a dark time in my life. But I think God knew that it was going to happen, and he tried to stop it and block it. So he sent an angel, and the angel came and he said, now is the appointed time. And the angel was talking about a wife for me. And I guess you can miss your appointed times, because I missed mine. It's not a good thing. This is definitely not a good thing, because what's interesting is that the revelation always bears witness. Instead of talking about all that, what I like is that revelation from God, like every revelation I've ever had from God, it always bears witness of the Bible. Because I never heard the word appointed time until an angel came. So I'm laying in bed, and I was half asleep, half awake. And an angel was over to my left. I'm laying in bed, and the angel's to my left. And he's back behind my head where I can just kind of see him I couldn't see him directly, but I could see him enough to know he was there, and I could hear his voice. And I didn't get a good look at him, so I can't tell you what he looked like. But he was there to my left, just over my head enough where, if you look at something, you can look at something directly, but yet you can still see stuff out of the corner of your eye. Like right now, I'm looking straight forward at a curtain in my window, but yet at the corner, even though I'm not looking at it, there's a mirror to my far left, and I can see it, even though I'm looking straight forward. I know it's there, but I can't. So that's how I saw the angel. I didn't look at it directly on, but I knew it was there to my left, and I could kind of see it, but I wasn't looking at it straight. But it was there, and I could definitely heard it speaking, and what it said was, "Now is the appointed time." And so I just wanted to bear witness of how revelation from God. And I never had ever heard that in the Bible. I didn't know the appointed times were in the Bible. It's interesting how an angel was the first preacher that preached to me about appointed times. Anyway, I'm just going to keep listening to this. I don't know if I'm going to comment much. So I could rewind this in case people's interested in watching this. Yeah, why not? Let's rewind it. What's interesting in this encounter that this rabbi had is he was. Well, I'll just rewind it. I can talk about it. Let's just go ahead and rewind it and watch the whole thing. But this is when he said appointed times, that's what made me want to make a recording. So I never heard that before until an angel actually came. An angel came and actually said the word appointed time. Because I never even knew it was in the Bible. Just never paid attention to it. Of course, it caught my attention when an angel came and said it. See, it's just amazing how many encounters that I've had, and they always bear witness to the Bible. So anyway, let's listen to this. Looks like it's only 20. Oh, that's short. It's only 22 minutes long. Anyway, let's go ahead and listen to this.
Rabbi Jason Sobel was taken to heaven, heard music beyond this world, and told about the next move of God. I have got a Jewish rabbi from New Jersey that studied at a yeshiva in Israel and boldly says that Jesus, Yeshua, is the Messiah, not just the Jewish Messiah, but is the Messiah of the whole world. And he's had quite an amazing search to come up with this conclusion. Would you believe his search started out by being a Jew-boo? You've never heard that term, have you? You think I'm making it up. I'm not. Rabbi Jason, tell me, what in the world is a Jew-boo?
Shalom. A Jew-boo is a Jewish Buddhist. And I grew up in a traditional Jewish family, was working in the music industry, looked at the lives of all these famous people, and I said, there has to be more to life than just this. Began a spiritual journey. I didn't want just religion. I wanted a real relationship, a real encounter with.
Okay, this guy looks familiar. I'm gonna look up his name on the internet. He looks familiar. He said he was in the music industry. I think I've seen him somewhere before. Maybe he's a music producer. I'm not really sure. But he looks familiar, so I just want to look his name up, see if he's known. See if I can find a Wikipedia of him. Yeah, this is what I want. There's Henry. That can't be him. He definitely looks familiar. I've seen him someplace. I didn't know Kathleen Lee Gifford wrote a book about Israel. I'm not finding. Let me try this again. I just wanted to see if he said he was in the music industry. See if I can find a Wikipedia. Let me just try Wikipedia. Wikipedia. I said Wikipedia. How come it didn't give me Wikipedia? Oh, this stupid thing. Here it is. Let me just try to look him up in it. See if anything comes up. Oh, it doesn't exist. Bummer. I guess he's not that big in the music industry, I guess. Anyway, I was just curious. I know I've seen him before, but anyway. That was a wild goose chase.
With the Lord. So I was going to synagogue, studying with my rabbi, but through martial arts and yoga, I became a Jubu, a New Age Jew, a Jewish Buddhist. I'd meditate for hours a day. One day, as I was meditating, my soul began to vibrate. It left my body. I could see my body there. It went through.
What caught my attention there is he said his soul began to vibrate. For some reason, when God shows up, I've only had that encounter one time. Let me just talk about that. It seems like when you have a God encounter of some kind, your soul vibrate. I had an encounter once. That must have been about 2009 or 10. So, or 8, I'm not really sure. Somewhere in that time. But anyway, Paula White was on the screen. And I never really sensed that too much power from Paula White as far as as far as too much happening as far as when I was watch her. But on this day, faith is something that can rise up in people. And this woman was with her, and she told Paula that she bared witness of Paula of something that God did using Paula White's ministry. And when Paula heard that, it's like it opened up a dam in Paula. like I think a lot of times Satan wants to dam us up. You know, Satan's goal is to dam up the flow of Christianity in Christians, and everyone that's a Christian has the potential to flow in the Spirit and have God work through us. But Satan is always trying to dam that up because he's a dammer, right? But that's what he does. He's always trying to block or dam up your ability for God to flow through you, and he's pretty good at it. I mean, he'll find. I mean, if you've seen stuff in the ocean, or not the ocean, but in a river, you'll see that all kinds of debris. It can be trash. It can be dead pieces. Dead pieces of wood, junk, old tires. All kinds of garbage can dam an area in the river up. And Satan's always trying to dam up the flow of the Spirit. So anyway, whatever this woman said to Paula, it undammed her. And when it undammed her, she spoke into the camera. She was doing a television broadcast, and when her faith was when her faith was risen, she was undammed. I don't know what had damned her up. I mean, there's so much stuff that can dam you up. That's all Satan tries to do all day long, is try to dam you up. And so anyway, it unblocked her. And when it did, her faith rose up, and God used it, and the tangible presence of God at that moment she was undamned, it flowed through her. That's crazy that God has to use people to flow through. It's a strange thing. I guess we become a portal. We become but anyway, it flowed out of her and through her, and it flowed into my living room, and quickly forgot about her programming, and because it wasn't her, it was God. So God showed up and was in my room, and it was a tangible presence of God, a thicker presence than I've ever felt before. It was more tangible, almost, I don't quite understand it other than it was thick presence. Almost tangible-ish. More solid than normal. And I've heard people talk about the weighty presence of God. It didn't fall on me though, but it was in the room. It didn't fall on me, but the tangible presence was in my room, even though it didn't fall on me. So, anyway, when it was there, I started vibrating because in God's presence, and I've heard more than one encounter. I've heard about 4 encounters where they talk about where people vibrate in God's presence. One encounter was the guy named Mickey Robinson that he actually was in heaven when it happened. He was standing in the river of life. When he's standing in the river of life, he was like vibrating, like a tuning fork, he said. And I've heard different Christians, at least 4 or 5 different Christians talk about this vibration in God's presence, where you still start vibrating. So here, he has somehow an encounter through meditation. He wasn't even trying to. That's interesting. But he vibrates, and here he's getting ready to have an encounter with God. So I just wanted to show how it tied in with a revelation that I have. And it seems like always stuff in Sid Roth. I always have something that ties in with what people talk about. That's how Christianity works. Anyway, let's go back to that, because that's what that reminded me of when he was talking about that.
Through the clouds, and the next thing I know, I was in heaven, and I arts and yoga. I became a Jubu, a New Age Jew, a Jewish Buddhist. I'd meditate for hours a day. One day, as I was meditating, my soul began to vibrate. It left my body. I could see my body there. It went through the clouds, and the next thing I know, I was in heaven, and I saw this king on this throne in this glorious light. I felt the power of God pulsating through every cell of my body, every
His revelation of being around God identifies with a guy I just got finished listening to named James Duran. James was in the throne room of God too, and he said that he could feel like a pulsation in the throne room. And he's describing the exact same thing in which James talked about in his encounter with God, where he could feel the God pulsating. But just look, if you want to find out where James was pulsating, he could feel the pulsation of the Father. Just look at some of James Duran's. James Duran went to heaven about 100 times, even more than that. It's interesting revelational encounters he talks about. I myself have never. There's only one time I almost thought I was going to leave my body and be taken up, but it scared me, and I resisted it. I mean, it just scared me half to death. So, but there was only one time that almost happened to me, and I'm not. Maybe it might happen someday. But it scared me. It really scared me, because I was about ready to be lifted off the ground, and I don't know if I was going to be lifted in the body or out of the body. Probably out of the body, but it felt like I was going to be lifted in the body, and that's what scared me. So anyway, that's another encounter that I had. I mean, what happened is when I hit on the word honesty, I was preaching in this tape recorder. When I hit on the word honesty, that's when That's when this encounter almost happened, where gravity disappeared. It scared me half to death. So I've experienced gravity disappearing, and I've experienced time slowing down in another revelation. And there was like I talk about in some of my other stories, there was a friend with me that wasn't a Christian that was around me when this happened, and he felt it too. So, I mean, I don't need validation from other people saying, "Oh, this stuff didn't happen." It happened because I was around someone that wasn't a Christian, didn't even know I was praying, and time slowed down, and he was the one that witnessed that time was slowing down. So I don't need people out there saying, "Oh, you're just making this crap up." It doesn't matter what you say. These things happened, and that's a fact. And I even have validation from another witness. I mean, I knew that myself that time was slowing down. At least that's what I thought it felt like. And when someone else validated it, there wasn't a Christian that didn't know I was praying. It was in a car with me when I was praying, and this portal opened up, and time slowed down. When someone that's not a Christian validates that, and they have no clue you're praying, So I've had an encounter with time and an encounter where gravity almost disappeared. But yet I wasn't taken up because I kind of chickened out on the whole thing. And God's nice about stuff like that. He doesn't push you. My first revelation with God was 14 years old when he knocked me off the bed. And he said to me, basically, my first encounter where you spoke to me in a voice that I could hear, and it was telepathy type voice, but you could hear the words clear as bell. He said to me, if you let me, I'll prove to you that I'm real. So in that encounter, I was about 14 or 15. I fell to the ground, and when God came in the room, it just dropped me to the ground. I had no choice. And then I was going to look, once I was laying on the ground face down, I was going to look up and see what God looked like, because he was on the right of me. And he said I wasn't allowed to look at him. So I've had to, and then talking about another encounter I had a vision of Jesus, and that was about 40 years ago. And I never saw an image ever that looked like Jesus until I saw the Shroud of Turin. It was 30 years later, 35 years later, I saw the Shroud of Turin, and I thought, well, there's Jesus. There's the first image I've ever seen that actually looks like Jesus. All these silly paintings that people do, I've never seen a painting that actually looks like Jesus. Now, when I saw the Shroud of Turin, I thought, there it is, right there. And I never knew about the Shroud of Turin until I saw a vision of Jesus 35 years before I even knew what the Shroud of Turin, before I even knew it existed. So it was back in 2010 or 11, somewhere around there, or 9. I learned about the Shroud of Turin. And when I learned about it then, I didn't even get a good image of it. But later, when I saw it, I thought, well, there's Jesus. That's who I saw in my vision. Now, I'm not saying this is validation of the Shroud of Turin. As far as I know, it probably is the burial cloth of Jesus. That's what I think. But I don't need that to validate my vision, because the vision is what validates it for me, because I know who I saw. But it's interesting how the Shroud of Turin is the only image I've ever seen that actually looked like Jesus. That's who I saw. But anyway, let's move on with this.
Every fabric of my being began to come alive with the power and the presence of God. I had never felt anything like this. It went through the clouds, and the next thing I know, I was in heaven, and I saw this king on this throne in this glorious light. I felt the power of God pulsating through every cell of my body. Every fabric of my being began to come alive.
Did you hear what he said there? See, most people don't know much about God. This stuff wouldn't catch their attention. But did you hear what he said there? He said, every fabric of my being started to come alive. First, he was vibrating. So let me show you another encounter that bears witness of this encounter. It was a near-death experience of Mickey Robinson. It's amazing how this stuff is so similar. Me having an encounter with God, the tangible presence of God, and I started vibrating. Christianity always bears witness of itself. It always does. So let's go to the revelation of Mickey Robinson. And that Mickey Robinson is one that was, when I realized that there wasn't time, when I had my revelation of time, that's when when it started to click on me when I heard Mickey Robinson's revelation that there's no time in heaven. That's when it clicked on me on that revelation where I experienced no time. So let's go to Mickey Robinson. I probably have all this on my favorites somewhere. See if I can find it without Mickey Robinson. There it is. This is probably, yeah, this is it right here. Let's make sure I got this on my favorites. Yeah, this is on. I have this saved. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Let's make sure I got my mic on. I probably have this saved, but I just want to double make sure. Yeah, I've got it on my phone. I need it on other places. Let's see, I got it on my favorites, which I'll never find it there. Let's put it on most powerful God services. I knew I had it somewhere. But listen to Mickey talk about some of this.
Flames and this is where God.
But just give it, like, so don't watch this whole thing. Mickey Robinson, as you can see, was in a plane wreck. Whole right side of his face was severely burned. His hand is he's probably going to get healed shortly. All of this is probably going to get healed. That's what I think. I wonder what he's up to nowadays. This is from 2007. I assume he's still alive. Anyway, this is place on this. But anyway, he was in a plane wreck. He's doing parachuting plane wreck. They hit a tree on the ground, I think, going 100 mile an hour. I don't know, some crazy thing. Plane caught on fire. His friend pulled him out, but not before Mickey was pretty well burnt to a crisp, and end up dying and having a near-death experience. So let's see where he's at this point.
I did the first miracle. This man grabbed a hold of my parachute harness and with his bare hands tore that was 2,000 pounds tensile strength in each one of those straps.
Wow.
So he pulled his thumbs out of his sockets, driving away from the plane.
And slapped the fire out. It kept reigniting, and he tried to go back for the pilot, and he couldn't. He was burned alive. Well, they rushed me off to the hospital. Obviously, it was horrible, and they rushed me off to the hospital and saw that I had sustained very serious injuries. I had a brain injury. I had burns over a large portion of my body. I had to find out my eye was blind, my right eye was blind, and tremendous cuts, and this shock of that crash. They told my family I was going to die. They told my sister to come that day because I was not going to be there in the afternoon. I had an experience I had never heard about, never heard anything like this. As I was laying there in that condition, just racked with pain and discomfort in every way possible, suddenly my inner man, the real me, my spirit, sat up out of my body, and I could feel my legs go through the springs of the bed.
Wow.
And my spirit came out of my body as if you would take a glove off your hand. And instantly, I was in a spiritual world. Instantaneously, I knew this was the real world. And this man that I was seeing was the real me.
Now, when that happened, were you aware of any pain still? Or
No,
were
I was totally
completely separated from the pain and the carcass.
Completely no, and I didn't even remember turning around looking. I mean, I was transferred immediately into a spiritual dimension, and everything about the spirit world is more real than this world. The colors are brighter, the edges of everything are sharper, the emotions are just enhanced.
It's funny how Christianity always ties together. He said everything in the spirit world is more real. When God gave me my first vision 40 years ago, that was the first thing I noticed. As I'm having a vision from God, it started out, it was a dream / vision, and then afterward I got hit by 2 electric shocks. That's the first thing that I recognized in this dream was that this dream is more real than anything I've ever seen in real life. The black was more sharper than I ever saw. Everything was more clear and more real. And I know it was a dream slash vision from God, because when I woke up, I could still see the dream. Then I got hit by 2 electric shocks. So, and I knew that came from God. But it's interesting how these things always bear witness. And I never even had when the vibration thing happened to me, I didn't have that happen. But anyway, let's keep going with this.
They are clear. And instantaneously, the thing that really struck me the most was there was a complete absence of the awareness of time. Everything in this world is relative to time. You know, you got up this morning, you'll go to bed at night. Something is old, something is new, it will get old. Something is born, it will die. Everything in this plane, in the physical plane, in the natural plane, is relative to time. But everything in the spiritual plane is relative to eternity. So what had been natural to be aware of time was totally gone. And I was totally aware of eternity. It is shocking. It is stunning to be conscious and to know what eternity is. Also, logic and reasoning doesn't happen there. You know, based on the sum total of all my intelligent thoughts that I've learned, you know, I've had a death and I'm in the spirit world. It's like you just know that you know that you know. It's like having a revelation constantly, and it was incredible. And I knew I was traveling. I could feel, you know, that I was traveling. And as I looked ahead, there was this pure white light. It was whiter than the whitest snow and brighter than 10,000 suns, and yet I could look right at it, and it was compelling. And it was like I was being towed. I was being towed like a tractor being. And as I was looking, I could feel this anticipation. But then simultaneously that, on my right side, I could feel something, and I looked, and there was this blackness sweeping. Now this blackness, as I looked at it, instantly I was aware of its complete nature. It was eternal, like I was experiencing eternity. It was without any matter. It was without any life. It was void, and it was forever non-negotiable, cut off from the source of all life. And the more that I looked at it, the faster it would sweep. And the more that occurred, the more intense the feeling of the nature of being cut off and sealed forever and separated. It is horrific.
Yes.
Horrific. You would not, I used to never be able to stand to be near anybody who could say go to hell after that. Because you wouldn't want the worst person. No. You wouldn't want Adolf Hitler, Bin Laden, Saddam. You wouldn't want any human being to ever go in there. It was so horrible. And as that was sweeping, it got down to, it was eclipsing this light. So there was just this, it was like you're in a room and you close the door, a dark room, and there's a little space between the door and the door jamb. It wasn't a doorway. It was really, this was a real place that I was seeing and that I was feeling. And as it was closing, it was eclipsing. And now I'm standing on the very edge, the precipice of eternal separation. And I scream out of my spirit, I'm sorry, I want to live. Give me another chance. And just before that was to close, I was standing in the presence of Almighty God. Whoa. And instantly I knew I would never die for eternity. And that's
mercy.
It's unbelievable. Wow. And instantly I knew that this being who was off on this side of me, who I didn't see, but I was standing in this river of golden radiation. It looked like a moving river of golden light. And this river went that way, it went that way, it was underneath me, it was going right through me, and this river was alive. I don't know how to describe it, except that
it's called the River of Life.
This river was alive, and it's going right through me, and I'm more alive than anybody can imagine. I mean,
see how he's bear witness of being more alive than he was ever before. Let's go back to what he was talking about when he was in the presence of God.
This light, I felt the power of God pulsating through every cell of my body.
Every fabric of my being began to come alive with the power and the presence of God. I had never felt anything like this. And this King.
See how that always bears witness? Their stories not only bear witness with each other's stories, they bear witness with my own experiences. When God showed up in a tangible presence, I started vibrating. When when God showed up one time when I was praying, powerfully connected to God, time slowed down. Mickey Robinson just got finished saying it's the absence of time. Mickey Robinson said it's more real. Now, I had a dream slash vision from God, but it was more real in real life. That's only because it came from God, and everything from God is more real, more alive than this life. So he can only, if he projects an image to you, it's going to be based on his reality, not this reality. Because this reality is not the real reality. It's space and time, and we have so much space in between our atoms, it's almost like we're not even real in the first place. We're mostly just a bunch of space. You have so much space between the nucleus of your atom and your electron. I mean, how can you really even say you're alive? Or that you're hardly even there? You're mostly just a bunch of empty space. But anyway, I don't want to get into all that. Let's go back to finish off Mickey Robinson, and I'll go back to the other guy.
This is the height of the experience of life, filled up with life, and somehow I knew this being was going to take care of me for eternity. I didn't see the New Jerusalem. I didn't see any angels in heaven. I didn't see any people who had gone before me. This was the max. So I was so filled with just the love and all of God's majesty, all of His authority, all of His love, everything was just flowing through me. I was like vibrating like a tuning fork, the very essence of God's nature. But when God spoke to me, and not in a language like you and I are talking now, but the knowledge of His purpose, the word of His purpose, came in through that same light. And I was taken back to the same way I was sort of like being reeled in like a kite, and I went down through space and time, this dimension. As my spirit settled into my body, and I could start to hear out of these ears and see out of this eye, I came to in the room materialized, kind of like they beam up on Star Trek, right. And I heard myself speaking in this beautiful language that I had never heard anybody talk about before.
Heavenly language.
Yeah, it was a beautiful language. And when my brain turned on, I thought, what in the heck is this other language? And I was no longer, the person who was dying and dead was no longer, and I was born again and filled with the Holy Ghost. I never heard about that. You know, for years I wondered, what was that blackness, and why did it sweep down to where it was just a sliver, like about a half inch of white light? And years later, God revealed it to me. It was really a historical record of my life. That for all the years that I had lived, I was in darkness, and God gave me a space to cry out to Him. And in that space, it changed my future, my destiny, my whole purpose. God loved me the whole time. God was with me. But, you know, please don't wait until you're that desperate. We're desperate right now, and He's with you, and you have a chance today to cry out to God. It's not complicated. It's not religious. I mean, certainly my prayer wasn't all that complicated, and it wasn't about religion. It was about I needed life, and there is no one of us before God that doesn't need the whole life that He has to offer. It's usually fear that keeps us from doing that. Or like we're afraid, well, I'm not good enough. That's the whole deal. We need God.
Anyway, I'm going to go back to this now.
On this throne told me I was called to serve Him, and I knew that that king was Jesus, that it was Yeshua.
Well, coming from a traditional background, I don't think it was that calm, was it?
No, I mean it was crazy because I knew nothing about Yeshua, knew nothing about Jesus, right? And I have this encounter with Him, and the next thing I know, I'm back in my room, shaking under the power of heaven, in this state of euphoria, start running around, saying, I'm called to serve Him. I'm called to serve Him. My Jewish mother's like, you're called to serve who? Jesus, we're Jewish, for crying out loud.
Okay, then, and by the way, in a moment, wait till you hear his encounter in heaven after becoming a believer. We'll do that shortly. But your best friend, John, something happened to him too, and he starts talking to you. What happened?
Yeah, he has an encounter with the Lord. He comes to faith in Yeshua, and he calls me on the telephone and he says, Jason, you went to Hebrew school as a child. Could you tell the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament? I said, sure. So he reads me this passage about the crucifixion, and I said, John, that's easy. It's the New Testament. He said, let me read you another passage. He was bruised for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities, and by his stripes we're healed. He said, Jason, old or new? I said, John, that's easy. It's the New Testament. It's Jesus. He said, no, that's Isaiah 53, the Jewish prophet speaking 700 years before he ever walked the face of the earth. And I was blown away. I'd never heard that passage growing up.
And then he wanders into a Messianic Jewish synagogue by our friend, Rabbi Jonathan Kahn, and he accepts the Messiah in that synagogue. And of course, he's given his first New Testament. And he takes it home, and his Jewish mother promptly, how'd your mother find that? Just put it in the living room?
No, listen, I hid it in my bedroom, but moms have a special spiritual gift to find anything. You can't hide anything from your mom.
And then a week later, this is amazing. A week later, he sees his first miracle. And I mean, you don't start with a headache, do you? What happened?
No, I used to help homeless people in New York City, and I get a collect call from my friend Jeff, who was in NYU Medical Center. He had been sleeping outside. He got gangrene. The doctors tell him, we're going to have to amputate your legs from the knees down.
Awful, homeless
Horrible.
guy.
Could you imagine being in New York City with no legs, homeless on the street? I mean, it's unimaginable. So I just read the book of Acts. So I go to the hospital and see him. I said, look, they healed people. They prayed for him in the Bible. I remembered a passage in the book of Acts. I laid my hands on him. I said, silver and gold have I none. What I have in the name of Yeshua, rise, take up your bed and walk.
You took the word literally.
I took it literally. That's what it said. That's
So what happened to your friend?
He got healed, he got saved, and he walked out of the hospital a week later.
Say, that's normal. It's too bad. People pick up, we Jews think we have a corner in the market. Christians have a corner in the market too. It come from Fiddler in the Roof, tradition. You wrote a brand new book, and you are bringing together Jews and Christians, and the subject is aligning with God's appointed times. Why did you write this book?
I believe it's so important. It is about the biblical Jewish holidays. I think every believer in Yeshua needs to understand for a number of reasons. One is the biblical holidays are prophetic. When you understand their significance, when you read this book, you're going to tap in to the prophetic meaning and the prophetic power for your life, and it releases that in such a way that it is life-changing and transformative.
Well, I am amazed at the number of top Christian prophets that say to me, Sid, I don't understand it, but at these feasts, it's like a portal, a door opens to heaven like Jacob and the angels coming up and down the ladder. It happens on the feast. Why is that?
Yeah, because they're called in the Bible the Moedim, the Lord's appointed times. God has set these appointments going back to the very beginning of creation when he says he put the stars in the sky, the sun and the moon for times and for seasons is for the appointed times. These holidays are woven into the fabric of creation. They're not just meant to be past remembrances. They're meant to be reoccurrences and reactivations of these prophetic holidays in our life. And of course, every Jewish holiday finds its fulfillment in Yeshua Jesus. Every major event in his life happened on a biblical holiday, so of course they're going to be significant. God wants to do the same in our life today.
Now, you're not saying that you have to do these feasts. You're saying, what a platform to understand who Yeshua was. What a platform to understand his teaching in reference to his own culture. What a platform to have an insight into the whole first coming of the Messiah and the whole second coming of the Messiah. What an insight into just having contact with heaven just through this point of contact. And the feasts are the appointed times. I take it a step further. They're appointments with God. Now, the thing that really intrigues me is you went to a healing meeting. Even though you're praying for people that are being healed, you go to a healing meeting, and our friend, who's been a guest many times on this show, Bill Johnson, is teaching on healing. But somehow you ended up in front and him prayed for you. What happened?
Yeah, a friend of mine introduced me to him, and Bill Johnson laid hands on me, and he said, you wear many mantles like Joseph, and he gave me this word, and God began to speak to me through that. He said to me, Jason, you've known me as the son of Joseph, as the suffering servant, but you haven't fully known me as the son of David. You've known me as the lamb, but not fully as the lion. Don't settle for a form of godliness that lacks power. The greatest revival in the history of the world is coming, and it's rooted in supernatural signs and healings, and you need to pray for the sick, and you will see me do incredible things to impact people's lives.
Well, what happened when Bill Johnson laid hands on you?
Oh man, I felt the presence of God. I felt the anointing of God. And out of that, I had this encounter with God in that meeting where I understood that every believer, including myself, needed to be activated in supernaturally ministering to people. And what happened is, shortly thereafter, I get invited to a Messianic congregation to speak, and I go forward and I say, before I speak, can I just pray for people that might need healing? We never even got to the message because so many people came forward for prayer, and one of the elders of the congregation who had a muscular dystrophy wound up getting supernaturally healed. The rabbi walks into the congregation the next week. He sees her dancing. She could barely walk sometimes. He's like, how is this possible? He's like, I got healed.
Just out of curiosity, you had seen some healings before, but they evidently, after Bill prayed for you, they really increased with intensity.
There was an activation in my life, and although I had encountered that, you know, sometimes it takes it being stirred up and us being encouraged and exhorted to walk in it. And I began to walk in it in a new way as a result of that, and started to see many supernatural things.
And then after becoming a strong believer, now he's taken to heaven again. Tell me about that trip.
Oh, it was incredible. So, I mean, after all of this happens, I'm like, Lord, I want to encounter you. I want to have a supernatural encounter with you. So I'm praying, and again, all of a sudden, my body begins to vibrate, and the next thing I know, I'm standing in heaven, and I'm standing before the throne, and there's a throng of worshipers around the throne of the Lord, and every time a syllable comes out of their mouth, my entire body shakes like a bass drum under the power of the worship and of the presence of God in heaven. And I hear two songs being sung. One is a Hebrew song, okay, singing about the Rock of Israel, and one was like a contemporary worship song. And I say to the Lord, what does this mean? And the Lord brought me to the book of Revelation, where it says, they sang the song of Moses and the Lamb, and spoke to me saying, this represents the revival that's going to happen great revival that's going to happen, and is going to happen as a result of Jew and Gentile coming together. The song of Moses represented the song of the Jewish people, and the song of the Lamb represented the New Testament and the believer song. And when those two songs merge, it's a picture of Jew and Gentile, the one new man coming together that's going to help usher in a great move of God, the greatest move of God the world has seen.
Well, could it be that in the book of Romans, it says that it will, when the Jews come to Messiah, it will literally be life from the dead. But could it be more than what most people think? Could it be a release of the glory like a measure the world has never seen? Is that what God's showing you?
Exactly. That's what I believe he's showing me.
Traditional rabbis under the Old Covenant call this the decade of breakthrough. Did you know that? How much more breakthrough is under the better covenant, the Brit Hadashah, the new covenant? Many will experience breakthrough, healing, and deliverance when Rabbi Jason will blow the shofar over you, and everything that from the past, be right back.
We will be right back to It's Supernatural. Call now and get Rabbi Jason Sobel's anointed book, Aligning with God's Appointed Times, and his powerful 3-part audio CD teaching series, The Decade of Breakthrough. It's exclusive for our It's Supernatural audience. Yours for a donation of $35. Shipping and handling is included. Ask for offer number 9749. You will receive Rabbi Jason Sobel's anointed book, Aligning with God's Appointed Times. Rabbi Sobel will introduce you to the Jewish roots of Christianity. Discover the prophetic and spiritual meaning of the biblical feasts. Understand that the biblical Jewish feasts are to be a part of the lives of all followers of Messiah. Gain a heightened biblical perspective as you begin to practice the same traditions and rituals Jesus embraced. Find out how aligning with God's appointed times will help you discover more of God and His intended blessings for you. Understand how the feasts will open the door to a fresh fullness of the inheritance you are able to access as a born-again spiritual son or daughter of the one true God.
The biblical holidays are not just about past remembrances. They are meant to be reactivations in your life.
You will also receive Rabbi Sobel's powerful 3-part audio CD teaching series, The Decade of Breakthrough. We are now entering an unprecedented supernatural decade, and he reveals how you can access your healing, your miracle, and God's supernatural breakthrough for your life. In this series, you will understand the prophetic importance of this time in the Jewish calendar. Learn how the power of declarations can accelerate your breakthrough. Discover the supernatural keys to become an overcomer. Realize how to transform the chaos in your life and around you into blessings. Find out how to tap into the favor of God in 2021. Throughout this series, Rabbi Jason releases powerful declarations and blessings. Don't miss out on getting Rabbi Jason Sobel's anointed book, Aligning with God's Appointed Times, and his powerful 3-part audio CD teaching series, The Decade of Breakthrough. It's exclusive for our It's Supernatural audience. Yours for a donation of $35. Shipping and handling is included. Ask for offer number 9749. Call or you can send your check to Sid Roth. It's Supernatural. P.O. Box 39222, Charlotte, North Carolina 28278. Please specify offer number 9749 or log on to sidroth.org. Call or write today. We now return to It's Supernatural.
You know, it's so amazing. Even Jewish believers that have gotten a hold of his brand new book and are reading it are getting insights they didn't even know is going on, especially because, you know, you understand Christianity, you understand Judaism, and even better, you understand the merger that God originally intended for the two. I want you to take one of the feasts and I want you to explain simply what that means with the type of explanations you have in the book, which is obviously much more, but go ahead.
So one of the most spiritually significant of all the biblical holidays is the Feast of Trumpets, or Rosh Hashanah. That is the holiday on which Abraham and Sarah actually conceived after being barren for so many years. It's when Hannah conceived her son, the prophet Samuel, and it's so significant. The blowing of the shofar reminds us of that. The blowing of the shofar reminds us that this is the birthday of creation in Jewish thought, and When we blow the breath into the shofar, it's like the breath of life God breathed into the first man and woman. So when we hear the sound of the shofar, God is saying, I want to bring forth new blessing. But the sound of the shofar is also the sound of change and transformation as well. Think about it for a moment. The word Rosh Hashanah in Hebrew, the word Shana means year, but it also means Shanui in Hebrew, which means change. The sound of the shofar is meant to change things. When the sound of the shofar was blown at Jericho, the walls came tumbling down. Everything changed for the children of Israel. But of course, there is more. When we think about the ultimate change and transformation, when Messiah returns, he's going to return with the sound of the shofar. And in that moment, in the twinkling of an eye, we are all going to be changed in that moment.
You know what I'm thinking, Rabbi Jason? When he blows this shofar, and once you get this insight into this is the decade we're in right now of breakthrough. Why do you say it's the decade of breakthrough?
Oh yeah, because on the Hebrew calendar, this is the decade of the 80s. And 80s in Hebrew is represented by the letter Pei because Hebrew is alphanumeric. Every number is written with the letter. And the letter Pei is the letter of breakthrough, with it, which is parat in Hebrew. Everything related to the breakthrough of the coming out of Egypt is connected to the letter Pei. Pharaoh, who enslaved them, begins with the letter Pei. Passover begins with the letter Pei. Redemption, the word begins with the letter Pei. Pei has a numerical value of 80. Moses was 80 years old when God said, use your Pei, use your mouth to go say to Pharaoh, let my people go. So this is a time to come out of a place of confinement, restriction, and slavery. It is time to break through. That power is being released in this decade.
All right, you're going to release it. He is going to blow the shofar, and you are going to have your breakthrough because this is the decade of breakthrough. But before he prays for you, I want to make sure that every sin, every bad deed you've ever done is covered with the blood of Messiah. Holy Spirit, help these people come into a revelation of not just believing in Yeshua, in Jesus as the Messiah, but having experiential knowledge. That's what God wants. I want you to repeat this prayer out loud. Dear God, out loud. Dear God, I'm a sinner. I'm so sorry. I believe the blood of Jesus washes me clean. It's the blood of atonement from Yom Kippur. It's the blood that was at Passover over the doorpost. That was the shadow of what this is. This is the blood of Messiah himself, who gave his blood for you. Now out loud, I make Jesus my Messiah and Lord. Jesus, come inside of me. Amen. Blow the shofar. Say a quick blessing and then blow the shofar.
The sound of the shofar is a sound of freedom. The sound of the shofar is the sound of breakthrough. The sound of the shofar is a sound of God's provision being released in your life. Just like Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the ram caught in the thicket, God had a ram in the bush. He has provision and blessing and breakthrough for you. And when this shofar sounds, it is going to be released in your life, and you are going to see the breakthrough in the name of Yeshua, Jesus. Walls are going to fall, things are going to open in his name.
Breakthrough in Yeshua's name.
I kind of fell asleep through the rest of that. So I'm going to take a nap before work and end the recording here.